When gifted seamstress Isabel Mendez saves a bride's ruined dress, she never expects to catch the groom's eye, or unravel the carefully sewn plans of a wedding not meant to be. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Isabel Mendez sat in the back room of Forever After, the small but charming bridal boutique in downtown Savannah, where she had worked for the past 4 years. At 28, her nimble fingers were known throughout the shop as nothing short of magical. She was the quiet one, the fixer, the woman who could take a disaster and transform it into perfection with just a needle and thread. "Isabel, can you help with Mrs. Peterson's veil?" "The lace is coming loose again," called Martha, the shop owner, a plump woman in her 60s with a kind smile and hair the color of steel. "Of course," Isabel replied softly, setting aside the beadwork she'd been focused on all morning. That was her role here, fixing things that others couldn't. She worked in silence while brides laughed, cried, and dreamed around her. Isabel was the invisible hand that made everything right, and she was used to it, just like her mother had been, always in the background, always overlooked. The bell above the shop door jingled, and Isabel could hear Martha's welcoming voice followed by what sounded like sobbing. Curious, she peeked around the curtain that separated her workspace from the main showroom. A stunning blonde woman stood there, mascara running down her face, clutching a garment bag, like it contained something both precious and terrible. "It's ruined," the woman wailed. "My wedding is in 2 weeks and look at this mess." She unzipped the bag to reveal a gown that would have been breathtaking if not for the obvious flaws. The beading along the bodice was uneven. The hem was noticeably crooked, and one of the sleeves hung at an awkward angle. "This cost me $5,000, and the designer said there's nothing they can do to fix it in time." The woman's voice rose higher with each word. "My wedding is going to be a disaster." Martha looked panicked. Isabel knew that look. It meant business they desperately needed, but trouble they didn't want. Before she could think better of it, Isabel stepped out from behind the curtain. "May I?" she asked, pointing to the dress. The blonde woman blinked at her through tear-filled eyes. "Who are you?" "Isabel." "I'm the seamstress here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'd like to take a look if that's okay." The woman hesitated, then thrust the dress toward her. "It doesn't matter anyway. It's hopeless." Isabel carefully examined each seam, each bead, each fold of fabric. Her mind was already calculating what needed to be done, how much time it would take, what materials she would need. "Give me 2 days," she said finally, looking up. "I'll make it right." Martha's eyes widened in surprise, but the blonde woman just laughed bitterly. "No offense, but this is a Valentina original. You really think you can fix what her own people said was impossible?" Isabel stood a little straighter. "Yes, I do." Something in her quiet confidence must have gotten through to the distraught bride. She wiped her tears away and extended her hand. "I'm Chloe Sinclair, and at this point, I have nothing to lose." For the next 2 days, Isabel barely slept. She unpicked damaged seams, repositioned beads, and adjusted the cut of the sleeve until her fingers ached and her eyes burned. But slowly, the disaster transformed into something beautiful. On the morning of the promised deadline, Chloe returned, clearly expecting disappointment. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped anxiously against her designer purse as Isabel carefully removed the dress from where it hung. "Oh my God," Chloe whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Is that really my dress?" The gown was immaculate now. The beading caught the light in a perfect cascade down the bodice. The hem hung evenly, and the sleeves draped elegantly. "Would you like to try it on?" Isabel asked. In the fitting room, Chloe couldn't stop staring at her reflection. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined when I ordered it," she said. "How did you do this?" Isabel shrugged, adjusting a pin. "It just needed some care." "Well, you're a miracle worker," Chloe declared. "I'm bringing my fiancé with me for the final fitting. He has to see this transformation." 2 days later, Chloe swept into the boutique with a tall, dark-haired man in tow. Isabel watched from her workstation as he greeted Martha with warm politeness. There was something about him, a quietness, a steadiness, that made her pause her work to look a little longer. "Marcus, you wait out here," I don't want you seeing too much of the dress before the big day, Chloe said, giving him a quick kiss, before disappearing into the fitting room with Martha. Left alone, Marcus Blake wandered around the showroom, hands in his pockets, looking slightly out of place among the veils and tiaras. Eventually, his gaze drifted toward the back room and he spotted Isabel. Their eyes met for a brief second and Isabel quickly looked down, focusing intently on the lace in her hands. But she could feel him watching her. "So you're the magician. Who saved my fiancé's dress?" His voice was deep and warm. Isabel glanced up, a pin held carefully between her lips. She removed it before answering. "Just doing my job." "From what Chloe said, you did a lot more than that." He stepped closer to her workspace. She said it was ruined beyond repair when she brought it in. "Nothing's ever really beyond repair," Isabel said softly. "Sometimes things just need more attention than people expect." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. "That's a nice way of looking at the world." Before she could respond, Chloe's voice rang out. "Marcus, come see." He gave Isabel a small smile before turning away. "Thank you," he said, "for making her happy." Isabel watched as he disappeared into the fitting room. She could hear Chloe's excited chatter, Martha's proud comments, and occasionally Marcus's low, thoughtful responses. When they emerged, Chloe was beaming, clutching Marcus's arm. "It's perfect now," she announced. "Absolutely perfect." But as they headed toward the door, Isabel noticed Marcus looking back. Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away immediately. There was something in his gaze, a question maybe, or recognition of something familiar. Isabel was the first to break contact, turning back to her sewing with a strange flutter in her chest that she tried hard to ignore. That night, in her small apartment above a coffee shop in the historic district, Isabel couldn't stop thinking about Marcus's eyes. There had been weariness there, hidden beneath his polite smile. She recognized it because she'd seen it in her own reflection many times. The look of someone trying very hard to fulfill expectations. She pushed the thought away. He was engaged to be married, to a beautiful, wealthy woman who clearly adored him. Whatever she thought she saw was just her imagination, a seamstress spending too much time alone with her needle and thread, weaving stories that didn't exist. A week passed. Isabel worked on other dresses, other veils, helping create perfect days for women she would never see again after their fittings. That was her role, to be forgotten once her task was done. Then, unexpectedly, the bell above the shop door jingled, and Marcus Blake walked in. "Mr. Blake?" Martha greeted him warmly. "Is everything all right with the dress?" "Everything's fine," he assured her. "But Chloe's wondering if we could add some small crystals along the neckline. She saw something in a magazine and now she's got her heart set on it." "Of course," Martha said. "Isabel can handle that. When would you need it completed?" "Is 3 days enough time?" he asked. Martha nodded. "Isabel, can you come out here, please?" Isabel emerged from the back room, her heart beating a little faster when she saw him standing there. "Mr. Blake has a request for some adjustments to Miss Sinclair's dress," Martha explained. Isabel nodded, not trusting her voice all of a sudden. "I can explain what she wants," Marcus said. "If you have time now. I'll leave you two to discuss the details," Martha said, moving away to help another customer who had just entered. Marcus waited until they were relatively alone before speaking again. "I'm sorry to bother you with this." "It's no bother," Isabel said. "That's what we're here for." "Chloe changes her mind a lot," he said, and for a moment Isabel thought she heard a note of apology in his voice. "She saw some crystals in a bridal magazine that caught her eye." Isabel took out her notepad. "What kind of crystals? Where exactly on the neckline?" As Marcus described what Chloe wanted, Isabel noticed that he seemed to be watching her hands. As she sketched a quick design, "You make it look so easy," he commented. "I've been sewing since I was 6 years old," she replied. "My mother taught me." "Is she also a seamstress?" Isabel's pencil paused briefly. "She was. She passed away 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice held genuine sympathy. "Thank you." Isabel finished her sketch and showed it to him. "Something like this?" Marcus studied the drawing. "That's exactly it. You understood perfectly. Their fingers brushed as he handed the sketch back, and Isabel felt that strange flutter again. The crystals will need to be ordered, she said, taking a step back. But we should be able to have everything ready in time. Thank you, Isabel. The way he said her name made her look up. He was studying her face with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. You're welcome, Mr. Blake. Marcus, he corrected. Please call me Marcus. Isabel nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. I should get back to work, she said. Of course, he stepped back. I'll let Chloe know it's all taken care of. As he turned to leave, he paused. You know, there's something about the way you work. Like you're completely at peace when you're sewing. Isabel didn't know how to respond to that. No one had ever really noticed her enough to make such an observation. Sewing makes sense to me, she finally said. Fabric doesn't pretend to be something it's not. It just is what it is. A smile spread across his face. Not the polite one he'd worn before, but something genuine that reached his eyes. I like that, he said softly. I really do. After he left, Isabel returned to her workstation, but her mind wasn't on the wedding veil in front of her. Instead, she kept replaying their conversation, wondering why this man, engaged to be married in less than a week, had looked at her with such interest, and why, despite knowing better, she had looked back at him the same way. Late that night, as she stitched tiny crystals onto Chloe's dress, Isabel hummed softly to herself, a habit she'd picked up from her mother. The tune was an old Spanish lullaby, one that always calmed her when her thoughts became too tangled. You're just doing your job, she whispered to herself. Nothing more. But as she held up the dress to check her work, she couldn't help wondering whose eyes she was really trying to please with her careful stitches, the bride's or the groom's, and that thought scared her more than she wanted to admit. The next morning, Isabel arrived at the boutique earlier than usual. She wanted to finish Chloe's dress without an audience. The tiny crystals she had sewn along the neckline caught the early sunlight, scattering tiny rainbows across her workstation. My goodness, you're here bright and early, Martha said, surprised to find Isabel already absorbed in her work. That dress looks magnificent. Isabel smiled, running her fingers over the beading. Just a few more crystals to add, and it'll be ready for the final fitting this afternoon. You know, I've been thinking, Martha said, setting her purse down on the counter. After the wonderful job you did with Miss Sinclair's dress, maybe we should promote you. Let you design some of our original pieces, not just do alterations. Isabel looked up, genuinely surprised. Really, you think I could do that? Honey, I've seen what you can do with a needle and thread. You have a gift. Martha patted her hand. Think about it, okay? The possibility brought a warmth to Isabel's chest. Her mother had always dreamed of designing wedding dresses, not just fixing them. Maybe this was her chance to fulfill that dream for both of them. The bell above the shop door jingled, and both women turned to see who had arrived so early. Isabel's heart did a small flip when she saw Marcus Blake standing there, alone, without. Chloe, Mr. Blake, Martha greeted him. You're out and about early today, he smiled politely. Good morning. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Not at all. Isabel's just putting the finishing touches on your fiancé's dress. Those crystals are going to look stunning. Marcus nodded, but his eyes had already found Isabel. Actually, I wanted to ask about one more adjustment, if that's possible. Martha looked concerned. The wedding is in 4 days. We're cutting it very close for more changes. It's small, he assured her. Just something Chloe mentioned last night. Martha glanced at her watch. I have a meeting with our supplier in 15 minutes. Isabel, can you handle this? Of course, Isabel said quietly, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened as Martha gathered her things and hurried out, leaving her alone with Marcus. He approached her workstation slowly, as if giving her time to adjust to his presence. The dress looks beautiful, he said, gesturing to Chloe's gown. Thank you. Isabel set down her needle. What adjustment did Chloe want? Marcus hesitated. Actually, there isn't one. I just needed an excuse to come here. Isabel's eyes widened. I don't understand. Neither do I, to be honest. He ran a hand through his dark hair. I haven't been able to stop thinking about our conversation yesterday, about fabric being what it is, not pretending. He gave a small, self-conscious laugh. I know that sounds strange. It doesn't, Isabel said, feeling both flattered and alarmed. But you're getting married in 4 days. His expression sobered. I know, and I'm not here to... He stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. I just wanted to ask you something. Isabel waited, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. How did you know? He asked finally. That sewing was what you wanted to do with your life. The question surprised her. It wasn't what she had expected. I didn't really choose it, she answered honestly. It chose me. My mother was a seamstress, and I grew up watching her work. It just felt right, like coming home. Marcus nodded, his eyes thoughtful. That's what I thought. You have that look when you work, like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. He glanced down at his hands. I've never felt that way about anything, not even about getting married. The words slipped out before Isabel could stop them. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, something raw and honest passed between them. I thought I did, he said quietly. At first. Isabel stood up abruptly. Mr. Blake, Marcus, I don't think we should be having this conversation. You're right. He straightened. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. I have work to do, she said, turning back to the dress. And you have a wedding to prepare for. He nodded, taking a step back. I just want you to know that what you do, it matters. The way you care about details that most people would never notice, the way you make things beautiful, it matters. Isabel kept her eyes on her work, afraid of what he might see if she looked at him. Thank you for saying that. I should go, he said after a moment. Yes, she agreed softly. You should. He lingered for a moment longer, then turned and walked out. Isabel didn't watch him leave, but she felt his absence immediately, like a shadow passing over the sun. That afternoon, Chloe arrived for her final fitting, accompanied by her mother, Latina Sinclair, a trim woman with the same blonde hair as her daughter, though hers was clearly maintained with expensive highlights. So this is the little shop that saved the day, Eleanor said, looking around with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mom, wait till you see what they did with my dress, Chloe said excitedly. It's better than it was originally. Martha led them to the fitting room, and Isabel brought the dress, now complete with its delicate crystal embellishments. Oh my God, it's perfect, Chloe exclaimed when she saw it. The crystals are exactly what I wanted. Eleanor examined the dress with a critical eye. The workmanship is adequate, she said finally. Though I still think we should have taken legal action against Valentina for sending you such a disaster in the first place. Chloe rolled her eyes. Mom, please, can we just enjoy the fact that my dress is perfect now? While Chloe tried on the dress, Isabel retreated to her workstation, but she could still hear their conversation from the fitting room. You've lost weight, Eleanor was saying. The dress is a bit loose in the waist. I've been too nervous to eat much, Chloe replied. Wedding stress. Well, we'll need it taken in today. Mom, the wedding is in 4 days. I'm sure it's fine. It is not fine. A wedding dress should fit like a glove. Marcus's family will be watching your every move. Everything has to be perfect. Isabel heard Chloe sigh. Fine. Do you think they can do it now? Martha appeared at Isabel's side. Did you hear that? They want the waist taken in, and they want to wait while you do it. Isabel nodded. I can do it. It won't take long. When Chloe emerged from the fitting room in her dress, Isabel approached carefully with her pincushion. If you could stand very still, Miss Sinclair, I'll mark where we need to adjust the waist. As Isabel worked, pinning the fabric carefully, Eleanor watched with narrowed eyes. Be careful with those pins, she warned. That fabric is delicate. Mom, she knows what she's doing, Chloe said, sounding embarrassed. She's the one who fixed it in the first place, Eleanor sniffed. Yes, well, fixing someone else's mistake is one thing. Not making new ones is another. Isabel kept her head down, focusing on her task. She was used to difficult mothers of the bride. They were often more stressed than the brides themselves. So have you and Marcus decided on a honeymoon location? Martha asked, clearly trying to change the subject. Chloe brightened. We're going to the Maldives. Marcus wanted Italy, but I told him we can do Europe another time. I need beach time after all this wedding stress. The Maldives is lovely, Martha agreed. My husband and I went there for our 30th anniversary. Well, Marcus is lucky Chloe agreed to marry him at all, Eleanor interjected. The Blake family may have old money, but they've never had our connections. This wedding is already opening doors for his company. Isabel accidentally pricked Chloe with a pin. Ouch, Chloe yelped. I'm so sorry, Isabel said immediately. See, I told you to be careful, Eleanor snapped. It was an accident, Mom. It barely hurt. Isabel finished pinning the dress in silence, then helped Chloe carefully step out of it. Can have this adjusted in about an hour, she said. Would you like to wait or come back? We'll wait, Eleanor decided before Chloe could answer. I want to make sure it's done right. While Isabel worked on the alterations in the back room, she could hear Eleanor and Chloe browsing the shop, with Martha showing them veils and accessories. Their voices drifted in and out of her awareness as she focused on her stitches. I still think the cathedral veil would have been more dramatic, Eleanor was saying. Mom, we've been through this. I wanted something simpler. Nothing about this wedding is simple, Chloe. We have 300 guests coming, including the governor. I know. There was a pause, then Eleanor's voice again, softer this time. Darling, are you sure about this? About Marcus? Isabel's. Hands stilled. What do you mean? Chloe sounded defensive. It's just you don't seem as excited as a bride should be. You're more enthusiastic about the flowers than about the man you're marrying. That's not fair. I love Marcus. Do you? Or do you love the idea of him? Stable, responsible, good family? Mom, stop. We're not having this conversation 4 days before my wedding. Isabel forced herself to continue sewing, trying not to listen to what was clearly a private moment between mother and daughter. But Chloe's response lingered in her mind. She hadn't denied her mother's accusation, just refused to discuss it. An hour later, Chloe tried on the adjusted dress. Perfect, she declared, twirling in front of the mirror. You really are a miracle worker, Isabel. It looks lovely on you, Isabel said sincerely. Well, I suppose it will do, Eleanor conceded, though I still wish you'd gone with the Moretti design I showed you first. They left shortly after, with Chloe promising to return the next day with her bridesmaids for their final fittings. As the door closed behind them, Martha turned to Isabel with a sigh. That woman is a piece of work. Poor Chloe. She seems very focused on making sure the wedding is perfect, Isabel observed neutrally. Some people care more about the wedding than the marriage, Martha said wisely. I've been in this business long enough to see it happen too many times. A big flashy wedding followed by a quiet divorce a few years later. Isabel thought about Marcus's face that morning, the weariness in his eyes when he'd admitted he'd never felt truly at home anywhere. She thought about Chloe's enthusiasm for her dress, for the Maldives, for everything except, it seemed, the man she was marrying. It wasn't her place to judge. She was just the seamstress, the invisible hands that made everything look perfect on the surface. What lay beneath wasn't her concern, but that night as she sat in her small apartment working on a piece of her own design, Isabel couldn't stop thinking about Marcus Blake, about the way he had looked at her as if he could see something in her that others missed, about the danger of that recognition and the impossible longing it had awakened in her. He's engaged, she reminded herself firmly. It doesn't matter what you think you saw in his eyes. The next day brought a flurry of activity to the boutique. Chloe arrived with her 4 bridesmaids for their final fittings, filling the small shop with chatter and laughter. Isabel kept to her workstation, making small adjustments to hemlines and straps as needed. She was just finishing up when the bell above the door jingled again. Her heart jumped when she saw Marcus enter, but this time he wasn't alone. An older man with the same dark hair, now streaked with silver, accompanied him. Dad wanted to see the shop, Marcus explained to Martha, since it saved the wedding. Robert Blake, the older man, introduced himself, shaking Martha's hand warmly. I've heard nothing but praise for your shop, especially for your talented seamstress. Chloe emerged from the fitting room with her bridesmaids. Marcus, Dad Blake, what are you two doing here? Just wanted to see what all the fuss was about, Robert said, giving Chloe a fatherly kiss on the cheek. While Chloe introduced her bridesmaids to her future father-in-law, Marcus made his way to Isabel's corner. "I'm sorry about yesterday," he said quietly. "I had no right to burden you with my doubts." Isabel kept her eyes on the bridesmaid dress she was adjusting. "It's forgotten." "No, it's not," he said, causing her to look up at him. "Not by me." Their eyes met, and Isabel felt that same dangerous connection, that pull towards something she knew she shouldn't want. "Isabel," he began, his voice low. "I need to—" "Isabel!" Chloe's voice cut through whatever he had been about to say. "There, you are. Can you come here? I want to show Dad Blake the amazing work you did on my dress." Isabel broke eye contact with Marcus and nodded. "Of course," as she walked over to where Chloe stood with the dress held up for her future father-in-law. To admire, Isabel was acutely aware of Marcus watching her. She could feel his gaze like a physical touch. "It's exquisite work," Robert Blake was saying, examining the crystals along the neckline. "You have a remarkable talent, young lady." "Thank you, sir," Isabel replied. "We were so lucky to find her," Chloe gushed. "The dress was a complete mess when it arrived." "Well, the Blakes have always appreciated skilled craftsmanship," Robert said warmly. "Haven't we, son?" Marcus stepped forward to join them, his eyes meeting Isabel's briefly before he turned to his father. "Always," he agreed quietly. The moment hung in the air between them, charged with meanings that Isabel couldn't or wouldn't fully interpret. Then Chloe was linking her arm through Marcus's, leaning her head on his shoulder in a possessive gesture. "3 more days," she said happily. "Can you believe it?" Isabel turned away, returning to her workstation with her head down and her heart racing. She didn't see the way Marcus's smile faltered or how his eyes followed her as she walked away. But Robert Blake noticed. The older man's gaze moved thoughtfully between his son and the quiet seamstress, a slight frown creasing his forehead. Later, as the bridal party prepared to leave, Isabel heard Robert say to his son, "That seamstress, there's something special about her." "Yes," Marcus agreed, his voice so quiet she almost didn't hear it. "There is." The door closed behind them, and Isabel was left with the echo of those words and the impossible wish that things could be different. The next morning, Isabel woke to the sound of rain tapping against her window. It was a gentle, steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat as she lay in bed, thinking about Marcus Blake and the wedding that was now just 2 days away. She had no right to these feelings. No right to wish that things were different. No right to the little flutter in her chest whenever he looked at her. She was the seamstress, nothing more. The woman in the background who fixed the broken things and then disappeared. The boutique was closed for the morning. Martha had a doctor's appointment, so Isabel took her time getting ready. She made a cup of strong coffee and sat by the window, watching the rain create patterns on the glass. It reminded her of the way light had played through her mother's sewing room when she was a child, how the sunbeams would catch on the needles and make them shine like magic wands. Her mother had been a gifted seamstress, but she had never had her own shop. She had worked from home, taking in alterations and occasionally making wedding dresses for women who couldn't afford the boutiques. And she had loved a man who could never fully be hers, a wealthy businessman who had visited her twice a month for 15 years, always with the promise that someday when the time was right they would be together openly. That someday never came. He had died suddenly, a heart attack at 58, and Isabel's mother had received the news from an impersonal obituary in the newspaper. There had been no acknowledgement of their relationship, no invitation to the funeral, nothing but memories and a small sum of money left discreetly in her bank account. Isabel had promised herself she would never follow that path. She would never love someone who belonged to someone else. She would never settle for scraps of attention, for stolen moments that had to be hidden away like shameful secrets. Yet here she was, thinking about a man who was days away from saying "I do" to another woman. The shop phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. She hesitated, then picked it up. "Forever After Bridal Boutique, this is Isabel." Isabel. The voice on the other end of the line made her heart skip. "It's Marcus Blake." She gripped the phone tighter. "Mr. Blake, how can I help you?" There was a pause. "I need to see you, to talk to you. It's important." "I don't think that's a good idea," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please," he said, and there was something in his tone, urgency, desperation maybe, that made her hesitate. "Just 15 minutes of your time, I'll meet you anywhere you want." Isabel closed her eyes. She should say no, she knew she should say no. "The coffee shop on the corner of Abercorn and Broughton," she said instead. "I can be there in 20 minutes. "Thank you," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I'll see you there." Isabel hung up and pressed her hands to her face. What was she doing? This was exactly the kind of situation her mother would have walked into willingly, eyes wide. Open, heart full of hope that would inevitably be crushed. But she would go. She knew she would. Because whatever this pull was between them, she needed to put an end to it before someone got hurt. The rain had lightened to a drizzle by the time Isabel arrived at the coffee shop. It was a cozy place with worn leather chairs and the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. She chose a table near the back, away from the windows, and ordered a simple black coffee to keep her hands busy. Marcus arrived 5 minutes later, his dark hair damp from the rain, his eyes searching the room until they found her. He looked as if he hadn't slept, with shadows under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. He ordered a coffee and came to sit across from her, his hands fidgeting with a paper napkin. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you." Isabel wrapped her fingers around her warm mug. "What is this about, Marcus?" He met her gaze directly. "I can't marry Chloe." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. "What?" she asked, not sure she had heard him correctly. "Can't do it," he repeated, his voice low but firm. "I thought I could. I tried to convince myself it was just normal pre-wedding jitters. But it's more than that." Isabel felt her heart racing. "You need to talk to Chloe about this, not me." "I know, and I will." He leaned forward. "But I needed to see you first, because you're part of the reason I finally admitted the truth to myself." "Me?" Isabel shook her head. "We barely know each other." "That's not true," he said softly. "From the moment I saw you sitting in that back room with pins in your mouth and that quiet focus in your eyes, I felt like I knew something essential about you. And like you knew something about me, too." Isabel looked down at her coffee. "This is crazy. You're engaged. The wedding is in 2 days. There are 300 people coming, including the governor." "I know how it sounds," Marcus acknowledged. "Believe me, I've been up all night thinking about what this will mean. My family, Chloe's family, our friends. But I can't go through with a marriage based on convenience and social expectations." "Is that what it is?" Isabel asked. "Just convenience," Marcus sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. "Chloe and I think we make sense on paper. Our families have known each other for years. We have similar backgrounds, and she's a good person, she really is. But we want different things. She wants the perfect life that she can display in photographs and social media posts. I want—" "What?" Isabel prompted when he trailed off. "Something real," he said simply. "Something that feels like home." The word hung between them, resonant with meaning. Home. What Isabel had told him she felt when she was sewing. "Marcus, I can't be the reason you call off your wedding." "You're not," he assured her quickly. "You're the catalyst, maybe. The person who made me realize what's been missing. But the problems with Chloe and me were there long before I met you." Isabel wanted to believe him, but she had heard similar words before, from her mother's lips as she defended her relationship with a married man who would never leave his wife. "He would be unhappy even if he had never met me," she had said. "I'm just the one who makes him happy when he can be with me." "What do you want from me?" Isabel asked Marcus directly. "Nothing," he said. "I just wanted you to know the truth before. I talked to Chloe, and I wanted to ask, after all this is over, when enough time has passed, if I could see you again. Properly." Isabel felt tears pricking at her eyes. "You don't even know me." "I want to," he said simply, "if you'll let me." Before she could respond, the door of the coffee shop opened, and a familiar voice made them both freeze. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Chloe Sinclair stood just inside the entrance, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the rain, her eyes moving from Marcus to Isabel and back again, confusion giving way to suspicion. "Chloe," Marcus said, standing up, "I didn't expect to see you here." Clearly, she said, her voice tight. She walked toward their table, her designer boots clicking on the wooden floor. "Hi, Isabel. Funny running into you here with my fiancé." Isabel's cheeks burned. "I was just having coffee with the man I'm supposed to marry in 2 days," Chloe finished for her. "How cozy." Marcus stepped forward. "Chloe, this isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like you're having a private little chat with the seamstress who's been making eyes at you since the first fitting." "That's not fair," Marcus said. "Isabel has done nothing wrong." "Then why are you here with her instead of at the venue, checking on the decorations like you were supposed to be?" Chloe demanded. Several other customers were now watching the scene unfold with undisguised interest. "We need to talk," Marcus said to Chloe, "but not here." "Oh, I think here is perfect," Chloe said, her voice rising. "Let's be honest for once. You've been pulling away for weeks. Every time I talk about the wedding, you get that distant look in your eyes. And now I find you here with her, and suddenly it all makes sense." "Nothing has happened between us," Isabel interjected, feeling the need to defend herself. Chloe turned to her, eyes flashing. "Do you think I'm stupid? I saw the way he looked at you in the boutique. I saw the way you blushed every time he came near you." Isabel stood up, gathering her purse. "I should go." "No, stay," Chloe said. "You're obviously more important to my fiancé than I am right now." "Chloe, stop," Marcus said firmly. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene? You're the one who's about to ruin everything we've worked for. Do you have any idea what calling off this wedding would do? The embarrassment, the explanations, the money that's already been spent?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Is that what you're worried about? The embarrassment? Not the fact that we'd be entering a marriage that neither of us really wants?" Chloe stared at him. "What are you talking about? Of course I want to marry you." "Do you?" Marcus challenged. "Or do you want the wedding, the status, the picture-perfect life that comes with being Mrs. Blake?" Tears welled in Chloe's eyes. "How can you say that to me? I love you." "I care about you too," Marcus said, his voice softening. "But we both know this isn't right. We've been going through the motions, playing the parts we thought we were supposed to play." Chloe's gaze moved to Isabel, who stood awkwardly to the side, wishing she could disappear. "And you think she's the answer? Some nobody who fixes dresses for a living?" "Don't talk about her like that," Marcus said sharply. Chloe's eyes widened. "Oh my God, you're in love with her, aren't you?" "Chloe, no, I want to hear you say it," Chloe insisted. "After 4 years together, you're throwing everything away for a woman you just met." Isabel stepped forward. "This isn't about me. Whatever issues you two have, they existed before I came into the picture. Stay out of this," Chloe snapped. "No, she's right," Marcus said. "This isn't about Isabel, it's about us. About the fact that we've been living a lie." Chloe's face crumpled. "A lie? Our whole relationship has been a lie?" "Not all of it," Marcus said gently. "But somewhere along the way we lost sight of each other. You became obsessed with the wedding, with what everyone else would think, and I just went along with it, because it was easier than admitting the truth." "Which is what?" Chloe demanded, tears streaming down her face now. "That we don't make each other happy." "Not really." The coffee shop had gone completely silent, everyone watching the drama unfold. Chloe looked from Marcus to Isabel and back again. "I can't believe this is happening." "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "I never wanted to hurt you, but going through with the wedding would only hurt both of us more in the long run." Chloe wiped at her tears angrily. "You know what? Fine. The wedding's off. I hope you two will be very happy together." She turned and stormed out of the coffee shop, leaving Marcus and Isabel standing in awkward silence as the other customers pretended to return to their conversations. "I'm sorry," Isabel said softly. "This is all my fault." "No, it's not," Marcus insisted. "This needed to happen. I just wish it hadn't been so public." "I should go," Isabel said, gathering her things. "Isabel, wait." "No." She shook her head firmly. "This is too much too fast. You need to fix things with Chloe, not follow me." "But the wedding's off," he said, confusion in his eyes. "You don't know that for sure. She was upset. People say things they don't mean when they're hurt." Isabel took a step back. "And even if it is off, you need time. We both do." Before he could respond, she hurried out of the coffee shop into the rain, which had begun to fall more heavily again. She didn't look back to see if he followed. The next day, the boutique was buzzing with the news. Martha had heard it from a customer who had a friend who knew someone in Chloe's bridal party. The Sinclair-Blake wedding had indeed been called off. "Can you believe it?" Martha said, shaking her head. 2 days before the ceremony, all those flowers, all that food, all those guests who have already arrived in town. Isabel kept her head down, focusing on the veil she was repairing. "It's very sad," she managed to say. "Apparently, Chloe is telling everyone that Marcus was having an affair," Martha continued, unaware of Isabel's discomfort. "Though no one seems to know who with." Isabel's hands trembled slightly. "Do you believe that?" Martha considered the question. "Not really. Marcus Blake never struck me as the type. My guess is they finally realized they weren't right for each other. Better to call it off before the wedding than go through with it and end up divorced a year later." The bell above the shop door jingled, and they both looked up to see Eleanor Sinclair standing there, her face a mask of cold fury. "You," she said, pointing directly at Isabel. "I need to speak with you now." Martha stepped forward protectively. "Mrs. Sinclair, if this is about the cancellation, I assure you it had nothing to do with us. We're as surprised as everyone else. Don't play innocent." "With me," Eleanor said, her voice low and dangerous. "My daughter told me everything. How that man was sneaking around behind her back, meeting with your little seamstress." Isabel felt the blood drain from her face. "Mrs. Sinclair, Save it," Eleanor cut her off. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The humiliation my daughter is facing, the financial loss, the damage to our family's reputation." "Nothing happened between Marcus and me," Isabel said, finding her voice. "Liar." Eleanor stepped closer, her perfectly manicured finger inches from Isabel's face. "You wormed your way in, batting your eyelashes at a man who was spoken for, and now my daughter is devastated." Martha moved between them. "Mrs. Sinclair, I think you should leave." "Oh, I'm leaving," Eleanor said, "but not before I make sure everyone in this town knows what kind of business you're running here, preying on engaged men and ruining weddings." "So that's enough," came a deep voice from the doorway. They all turned to see Robert Blake standing there, his expression serious but calm. "Robert," Eleanor said, momentarily thrown off balance, I heard what you were just doing," he said, stepping into the shop. "And I think it's time you stopped." "How dare you," Eleanor sputtered. "Your son broke my daughter's heart, and this woman," she gestured at Isabel, "helped him do it." Robert sighed. "Eleanor, we've known each other for 20 years. Can we please speak honestly for once? This wedding was your idea from the start. You pushed Chloe and Marcus together. You orchestrated every step of their relationship, and you planned a wedding that neither of them really wanted." "That's not true," Eleanor protested. "They love each other. They cared about each other," Robert corrected. "But they were never in love, not the way two people about to get married should be." Eleanor's face flushed with anger. "So you're condoning your son's behavior, his infidelity?" "There was no infidelity," Robert said firmly. "Marcus has assured me of that, and I believe him. He and Miss Mendez may have formed a connection, but they did not act on it while he was still committed to Chloe." Isabel felt tears of gratitude forming in her eyes. She hadn't expected anyone to defend her, least of all Marcus's father. "I don't believe it," Eleanor said stubbornly, "and neither will anyone else in Savannah society." "That's your choice," Robert replied. "But before you start spreading rumors, remember that the Blake family has its own standing in this community, and we will defend both our son's honor and Miss Mendez's reputation if necessary." Eleanor looked from Robert to Isabel, and back again, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she adjusted her designer handbag on her arm and lifted her chin. "This isn't over," she said before turning and stalking out of the boutique. When she was gone, Martha let out a long breath. "Thank you, Mr. Blake. That woman is a force of nature." "Please, call me Robert," he said, then turned to Isabel. "Are you all right, Miss Mendez?" Isabel nodded, wiping discreetly at a tear that had escaped. "Yes, thank you for what you said." Robert smiled kindly. "I only spoke the truth. My son has a great deal of respect for you, and so do I." "How is Marcus?" She couldn't help asking. "Dealing with the fallout as best he can," Robert replied. "But he's certain he made the right decision." Isabel nodded, not knowing what else to say. "Well, I should be going," Robert said after a moment. "I just wanted to make sure you were all right. Eleanor can be formidable when she feels her family has been slighted." "Thank you again," Isabel said. After Robert left, Martha turned to Isabel with questioning eyes. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Isabel took a deep breath and told Martha everything: the conversations with Marcus, the meeting at the coffee shop, Chloe's discovery of them together. "Nothing happened," she finished, "but I can't deny there was something between us. A connection I couldn't explain." Martha patted her hand gently. "The heart wants what it wants, dear. You can't control that. But you did the right thing by stepping back and giving him space." "Do you think I'm like my mother?" Isabel asked in a small voice. "Falling for a man who wasn't free to love me back?" "No," Martha said firmly. "Your mother's situation was entirely different. She chose to be with a man who was married and had no intention of changing that. You recognized the potential for something wrong and stepped away. That shows character." Isabel nodded, wanting to believe her. "Now," Martha said, straightening her shoulders, "we have dresses to fix and brides to make happy. The world keeps turning, wedding or no wedding." Isabel returned to her sewing, grateful for the routine and the rhythm of needle and thread. But her mind kept drifting to Marcus, wondering where he was, what he was thinking, and whether someday they might have a chance to see what could grow between them without the shadow of another woman's wedding dress hanging over their heads. 3. Weeks passed. The scandal of the cancelled Sinclair Blake wedding gradually faded from the gossip circles of Savannah as newer, more exciting dramas took its place. Life at Forever After returned to its normal rhythm, with brides coming and going, dreams being stitched together one sequin at a time. Isabel threw herself into her work. Martha had made good on her promise to let Isabel design some original pieces for the boutique, and she spent her evenings sketching ideas and experimenting with fabrics. It helped keep her mind off Marcus, though she couldn't deny that he was often in her thoughts. She hadn't seen or heard from him since that day in the coffee shop. She told herself it was for the best. Whatever connection they had felt needed time to either grow into something real or fade away naturally. And after the public scene with Chloe and the confrontation with Eleanor, Isabel wasn't sure she had the courage to face him again anyway. "You've been working too hard," Martha commented one Friday evening as Isabel put the finishing touches on a new design. "Why don't you take tomorrow off? It's supposed to be beautiful weather." "I'm fine," Isabel assured her. "I like being busy." Martha gave her a knowing look. "There's busy, and then there's hiding. You've been doing both." Isabel sighed. Martha knew her too well. "I just need more time." "Time for what? To convince yourself that what you felt wasn't real, or to build up more walls so no one can reach you?" "That's not fair," Isabel protested weakly. "Life isn't fair, dear," Martha said gently. "But that doesn't mean you shouldn't live it fully." Isabel thought about those words as she walked home that evening. The spring air was warm, filled with the scent of magnolias and fresh rain. She had always loved Savannah in the spring, the way the city seemed to come alive with color and possibility. When she reached her apartment, she noticed something on her doorstep. A small package wrapped in brown paper with no return address. Her heart skipped a beat as she picked it up and carried it inside. With trembling fingers, she unwrapped it. Inside was a length of lace, delicate, handmade, with an intricate pattern of flowers and vines. It was the kind her mother had always dreamed of working with but could never afford. Tucked into the folds was a small note card. "For the next dress you make, maybe one that's yours." Isabel sat down hard on her sofa, the lace clutched in her hands. She ran her fingers over the delicate pattern, feeling the hours of craftsmanship that had gone into creating something so beautiful. How had he known? She had never told him about her mother's dream of working with fine lace, never mentioned how she had kept a small swatch of antique lace in her sewing box as a reminder of what craftsmanship truly meant. She set the lace down carefully and reached for her phone, then stopped. What would she say? "Thank you for the gift." Why now, after 3 weeks of silence? What did it mean? The question swirled in her mind as she got ready for bed, but sleep eluded her. In the quiet darkness of her room, she allowed herself to remember every moment with Marcus Blake, the way his eyes had softened when he watched her work, the honesty in his voice when he admitted his doubts, the quiet certainty when he defended. Her to Chloe. By morning she knew what she had to do. She had spent her whole life watching her mother wait for a man who never fully committed to her. She wouldn't make the same mistake. If Marcus wanted to see her, he would have to be clear about it. A gift of lace, no matter how thoughtful, wasn't enough. She dressed with care, choosing a simple blue dress that her mother had always said brought out the warmth in her eyes. Then she gathered the lace and headed out. The boutique was quiet when she arrived, with only a few early customers browsing through veils and headpieces. Martha looked up in surprise when Isabel walked in. "I thought I told you to take the day off," she said. "I know," Isabel smiled. "But I need to ask for a different favor." She explained about the lace, about the note, about her decision not to wait for Marcus to make the next move. Martha listened, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "So you want to close up early today?" she asked when Isabel finished. "Just for an hour or so," Isabel confirmed. "If that's all right." "More than all right," Martha said warmly. "It's about time." Isabel spent the morning working with a determined focus, her mind clear for the first time in weeks. At noon, she left the boutique and walked to the small park near the river where she often ate lunch. She settled on a bench under a sprawling oak tree, the lace carefully wrapped in tissue paper beside her. She didn't know if he would come. She didn't even know if he was still in Savannah. He might have gone away to escape the scandal, to give Chloe space to find his own path forward. But something told her he was still here, that he was waiting just as she had been. An hour passed. Isabel watched couples strolling hand in hand, children chasing each other across the green grass, elderly people feeding the ducks in the small pond. She was about to give up, to accept that she had misunderstood the gift or the timing when she saw him. Marcus was walking along the path that led from the street, his tall figure unmistakable even from a distance. He moved with purpose, as if he knew exactly where he was going. And he was carrying flowers, a small bouquet of wildflowers, nothing fancy or arranged by a florist, just simple blooms that might have been picked from a meadow. Isabel stood, her heart pounding in her chest. He saw her and paused, a mix of emotions crossing his face, surprise, hope, uncertainty. Then he continued toward her, stopping a few feet away. "Isabel," he said, her name like a prayer on his lips. "Marcus," she replied, surprised at how steady her voice was. "I got your gift." He nodded, his eyes moving to the package beside her on the bench. "I remembered what you said about your mother being a seamstress too. I hoped you would understand what I was trying to say." "I'm not." "Sure I do," she admitted. "Why now? Why after 3 weeks?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Because I needed to be sure that what I felt for you wasn't just an escape from my doubts about Chloe, that it was real." "And?" Isabel asked, hardly daring to breathe. "It's real," he said simply. "More real than anything I've ever felt." He held out the wildflowers. "These aren't from a fancy shop. They're from the garden behind my house. I planted them myself last year when I was trying to find something that made me feel connected, grounded." Isabel took the flowers, their sweet scent reminding her of childhood summers. "They're beautiful." "Like you," he said. "Not in a showy way, but in a way that matters. That lasts." Isabel felt tears pricking at her eyes. "I was so afraid," she confessed, "that I was like my mother, falling for someone who would never really be mine." Marcus stepped closer. "Your mother?" Isabel nodded, and for the first time she told someone the full story, about her mother's 15-year relationship with a married man, about the promises that were never kept, about the quiet dignity with which she had loved and lost. "I promised myself I would never be that woman," she finished, "never love someone who wasn't free to love me back. I'm free now," Marcus said gently, "if you'll have me." "What about Chloe?" Isabel asked. "What about your family, your business, all the people who were hurt by the wedding being called off?" "Chloe and I have talked," Marcus said. "Really talked, maybe for the first time. She admitted that she was more in love with the idea of the wedding than with me. that she felt pressure from her mother to marry well, to maintain a certain image. And your family. My father has been surprisingly supportive. He said he'd rather see me happy than following the path everyone expected. Marcus smiled slightly. As for the business, it turns out I'm pretty good at what I do, wedding scandal or not. Isabel looked down at the wildflowers in her hands, at the simple beauty of them. And what about us? We barely know each other. That's not true, Marcus said, echoing what he had told her in the coffee shop. I know that you hum Spanish lullabies when you concentrate. I know that you see beauty in broken things. I know that you value honesty above convenience. He reached out and gently lifted her chin, his eyes meeting hers. And I know that when I'm with you, I don't feel like I'm playing a part. I feel like myself, the self I've always wanted to be. Isabel's heart swelled with a mixture of hope and fear. This won't be easy, she warned. People will talk. Eleanor Sinclair will make sure of it. Let them talk, Marcus said with a shrug. I've spent too many years worrying about what other people think. I'm done with that. He gestured to the bench and they both sat down, the package of lace between them. What now? Isabel asked, her voice quiet but steady. Marcus smiled. Now, we stitch something new together. He reached for the lace, running his fingers along the delicate pattern. You know this takes time, right? Isabel felt a slow smile spread across her face. So do the best things. Their fingers intertwined over the lace, and for a moment, they just sat there, savoring the simple connection. There's something else you should know, Marcus said after a while. I've been thinking about making a change. In my work, I mean. What kind of change? Isabel asked. I've been running my father's investment firm because it was expected of me, but it's never been my passion. He hesitated. What I really love is restoration. Old houses, antique furniture, bringing beautiful things back to life when they've been forgotten or damaged. Isabel's eyes widened in surprise. That's not so different from what I do. I know, Marcus said with a grin. Maybe that's why I felt such a connection with you from the start. You understand the value of repairing what's broken instead of throwing it away. So what are you planning to do? I've bought an old building downtown. It needs a lot of work, but I think it could be something special. A place for craftspeople to work and sell their creations. He looked at her intently. Including a certain talented seamstress, if she's interested. Isabel felt her breath catch. You'd want me to be part of it? I want you to be part of everything. Isabel. The honesty in his voice was unmistakable. But I also know we need to take our time, get to know each other properly. She nodded, grateful for his understanding. I'd like that. Both the space for my designs and the time. Then it's settled, Marcus said, lifting her hand to his lips and placing a gentle kiss on her knuckles. One stitch at a time. As they sat together in the warm spring sunshine, Isabel thought about all the paths that had led to this moment. Her mother's quiet lessons at the sewing table, the years of working in the background, the tearful bride who had brought a ruined dress into the boutique on a rainy afternoon. Life, like the most beautiful garments, was made up of countless small stitches, some visible, some hidden, but all necessary to create the final pattern. 6 months later, Isabel stood in the newly renovated building that Marcus had bought. The old brick walls had been carefully restored, large windows let in streams of natural light, and the wooden floors gleamed with a warm patina. The space had been divided into different workshops, a furniture restoration area for Marcus, a jewelry designer's studio, a potter's wheel, and in the front corner with the best light, a seamstress's domain. Isabel ran her hand over the custom-built cutting table, the shelves lined with fabric and thread, the vintage dress form that Marcus had found at an estate sale and restored just for her. On a small table near the window sat a framed photograph of her mother, smiling as she bent over a piece of embroidery. "What do you think?" Marcus asked, coming to stand beside her. "Is it everything you imagined?" Isabel looked around the studio, at the space that would soon showcase her original designs. "It's more," she said honestly. "I never dared to imagine this much." Marcus slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. Over the past 6 months, they had built their relationship carefully, learning each other's habits and histories, dreams and fears. There had been difficult moments, The first time they ran into Chloe at a restaurant, the whispers that still followed them in certain social circles, but they had faced them together. "I have something for you," Marcus said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. Isabel's eyes widened. "Marcus, it's not what you think," he said with a smile, opening the box to reveal a delicate silver key. "At least not yet. This is the key to the building. Your name is on the deed along with mine. We're partners in this venture in every way." Isabel took the key, feeling its weight in her palm. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll create beautiful things here," Marcus suggested. "Say you'll help other artists find their voice. Say you'll build a life with me that's honest and real." Isabel looked up at him, at the man who had seen her when she was used to being invisible, who had valued her quiet strength and gentle hands. "Yes," she said simply. "To all of it." He kissed her then, softly at first, then with a growing passion that made her heart race. When they finally broke apart, Isabel remembered something. "Wait here," she said, going to a large garment bag hanging on a rack in the corner. "I have something to show you too." She unzipped the bag and carefully removed a dress. It was a simple design, elegant in its restraint, with a fitted bodice and a flowing skirt that would move like water when worn. And around the neckline, delicately stitched by hand, was the lace Marcus had given her that day in the park. "It's my first original design for the new studio," she explained. "I used your lace." Marcus stared at the dress, then at Isabel, his eyes filled with emotion. "It's beautiful, just like its creator." Isabel returned the dress to its bag, then turned back to Marcus. "When I was a little girl, my mother used to tell me that the strongest seams are the ones you can't see, that the true art of sewing lies in making the structure invisible." She took his hands in hers. "That's what we've been doing these past months, isn't it? Building the invisible structure of something strong and lasting." Marcus nodded, bringing her hands to his lips. "And we'll keep building one stitch at a time." Outside the large windows of their new studio, Savannah was preparing for another evening. The sun cast long shadows across the historic streets. Tourists and locals mingled on the sidewalks, and life continued its complex, beautiful pattern. Inside, Isabel and Marcus stood together in the space they had created, surrounded by possibilities and the promise of more tomorrows. Not a fairy tale ending, but something better. A real beginning, crafted with care, designed to last. Isabel thought about the lace on the dress she had designed, about how her mother would have loved to work with something so fine and delicate. But more than that, she would have loved to see her daughter find what she herself had never quite grasped. A love that didn't hide in shadows, that didn't make her smaller, that gave her room to grow. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, noting her momentary silence. Isabel smiled. "About patterns. How sometimes, if we're brave enough, we can create new ones." He squeezed her hand gently. "I like the pattern we're making." "So do I," she agreed. "So do I." And as the evening light filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow over their new beginning, Isabel felt a certainty she had never known before, that some things, once properly mended, become stronger at the broken places, and that sometimes the most beautiful creations come from hands that know both skill and heart, patience and passion. Hands like hers, a heart like his. A future they would stitch together one day at a time.